Hello. I wanted to post a video. I always like to post when I have inspiration for things. You know, have something I want to say, you know. There's like a saying. It's like God pours in so we can pour out. Um Sometimes that could be creative expression, whatever. Um but what I wanted to talk about, what I was thinking of today was healing. Um because like as I said in past videos, it's like I've done with God, I've done a lot of healing on my mind, my emotions, um spiritually, um and that's always like, I feel like a full process. It's almost kind of like, I know like this is a crazy analogy, but it's almost like someone overcoming a drug addiction while at the same time overcoming like battle wounds. Um, I had gotten diagnosed with PTSD. I had an amazing counselor at the time though, and I really don't have triggers anymore. Because my childhood was highly traumatic. But I say, I'll explain both analogies. It's kind of like overcoming PTSD when you're healing. Even if you weren't diagnosed with PTSD, it's almost like you've gone through battle, because whether you were diagnosed with PTSD, and that's basically like it's a high level of anxiety. It's like certain things can trigger you. I think most people know, or you might not, that like, a lot of times people that have been through war usually have it. I had a nurse I met one time. He was like, um, and I was there for, it was like a business, like I was getting like, is, medical, like attention, like I think like a physical, like blood pressure, weigh you, stuff like that. And he asked me like, how do you have PTSD? And I'm like, he's like, I've been through war and I didn't have PTSD. I'm like, my childhood. Um, so when you're healing, it's almost like overcoming something, because it's like if you've been through traumatic things, it can highly traumatic things, it affects your brain chemistry, you know. It affects and the thing is, people can't see what you've been through, and no one knows. It's like the Indian saying, it's like, don't judge someone until you walked a mile in their moccasins. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what someone's been through, what they've had to overcome, and the choices they were given. Um, I think we're all responsible for our own healing, because I've said in a past video, and I like this. It's like, if you don't heal, you bleed on people that didn't cut you. And I don't really agree that just because you've been through things is an excuse for bad behavior or treating people badly. Confirmation. Because for me as a person, I've been through the most. Confirmation. Childhood relationships, people coming against me the last couple years, and last 3 years, it's been crazy. But God has been so good, and it's like I've gotten to a place where, um, it's, coming out the other side of things. It's like, it's almost like sometimes your foundation has to be broken down, because it's like my mentality is like, the healed version of you is completely different. You know what I mean? So healing is like basically overcoming sort of battle wounds, because whenever you start healing, um, fear, you know what I mean, or just stress, or just sometimes a bad day, you know what I mean, or just like, like a bad situation, or just life, you know what I mean, can really just make you self analyze. I found the most important thing when you're healing is really um, making sure you take time to check in on yourself. You know what I mean? giving yourself some solitude, some peace. Um, and I found too another thing with healing, it's like I had a supervisor tell me, and it's true, you know what I mean? Because I'm the kind of person, it's like if someone gives me some truth, you know what I mean? It might take me a minute to kind of process it, but it's like, you come at me with truth and logic, I'm like, fair point. I'm not going to argue that. You know what I mean? It's like I might not you know what I mean? Because and I tend to choose to like, you know what I mean? There's videos, people post videos I like listening to, whether that be motivational or more intuitive things, or sometimes, um I just, things that just like resonate with me or speak to me. It's like it's good to have things that are holding you accountable. You know what I mean? And it's good to have influences, whether that's people you like listening to, you know what I mean? That it's good. It's good when someone speaks truth into you, about you, about life. You know what I mean? If someone says something to you and maybe you don't agree, it can feel like a personal attack. The supervisor, what she said to me, she's like, I'm a great worker, I do a great job. I don't really call in all that. But the only thing, she was like, you don't take correction well. Um, I would say that's probably true sometimes, you know what I mean? Because I, as a person, I hold myself to a very high standard, you know what I mean? Like, in how I work and how I conduct myself and just how I approach certain situations. And it's like, I would have to say that that probably is true, you know? Um, but I mean, I think it's good, you know what I mean? Like, it's not always fun, but I like when I'm triggered by something because it's a chance to self reflect. You know what I mean? It's a chance to analyze yourself and situations and all that. No one's always right and no one's always wrong, you know? But when she told me that, I kind of was like, what? Because it's like, for me as a person, especially like as a worker, I always like, I'm very thorough. You know what I mean? I try to have a good attitude. I like, let's get it done. Um, but yeah, you know, and so it's kind of like, yeah. So I would say that because I'm like one who likes to speak a lot of truths, you know what I mean? But it's like, the same token, it's like, the things that I'm saying, it's like, it's because I've learned lessons the hard way. I've been through some things, you know what I mean? God's given me a lot of insight, you know what I mean? Um, but that's why, like, in a lot of situations, like I've said, I like release in love, you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes things are just for a season, sometimes they're just for a lesson, you know what I mean? I don't think it's ever that serious. Somebody I like listening to, they posted a video and it's like, people, you know what I mean? Like I said, when I see people, I see spirits, like either it's like what you've poured into yourself. Someone walks in the room, you feel their presence, you feel their energy, you feel their essence, and that can be good or that can be bad. I could also add this too. Depending on how you've healed and what you're feeding into yourself is how you're going to receive certain things. Because for me, it's like I've done a lot of healing, addressing my mental, emotions, mind. Um, Everyone's different. Some people, their idea of like growing, get their money up, their body up. You know what I mean? Some people in the world, they don't really like, they're not going to necessarily unless you have God, it's kind of hard to heal things because it's like people just learn to live with wounds. They learn to live with scars. They're like battle scars. That's why I said healing is like making it through war and while simultaneously getting over like a drug addiction. And I've never had a drug addiction or anything like that. But it's like it's almost kind of like overcoming a drug addiction because as you heal, you really got to protect yourself. You know what I mean? Because some people, ill intended or not, are not going to get it. And sometimes, whenever you're healing, sometimes you break down before you break through. You know what I mean? Because it's like that NF song, it's like Mansion, and he gets to the part of the attic and he's like, there's things living in there, you know? When you've been severely traumatized as a person, you know, um, you develop a way of shielding yourself, guarding yourself, you black out certain things, you know? And for me, I always had God. But even with that, before, like, I was always traumatized. I had rage inside me, not anger. I had rage. No, I would say I was always angry, but I got in a I was with somebody, and it was married them. You know what I mean? They've since done some counseling, kind of thing, and they had things happen to them, but I went from being angry to like rage filled after. Um, and it's like almost like being in that situation. It was kind of like I kind of lost my spark a little bit. Um, I guess my enthusiasm. Um, I don't know. But that's why and I'll probably go more into things like that in more in depth. But I kind of like to stay on point, I don't, because it's like I think I can go on a tangent kind of thing, but I'll go more into things like that. Because I have so many things that I could share, stories, knowledge, wisdom, and that this is a point that I was wanting to make. Another thing I could add into, it's like, if God is for you, who can be against you? No weapon formed against you shall prosper. God works all things out for the good of those trust Him, called according to His purpose. Because I'd like to highlight this. I've never been in a better place mentally, emotionally, spiritually than ever. You know what I mean? It's like God had to give me a strong foundation. and it's like without vision the people perish. If you work on healing your soul and your mental, your internal, it's like almost like your mind expands as to the possibilities. But even still, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like we're all human. I think you have to keep reminding yourself it's okay to flourish, it's okay to thrive, because it's almost like I'm great on my hard skills, work ethic, determination, strength. It's like almost now getting to the point where it's okay to like, I'm coming more into my feminine energy, I guess you would say. Um, and it's interesting, you know? And it's like I'm almost like learning how to like really like enjoy life and giving myself permission to really enjoy life. Um but healing is like that because it's like as you heal and you work on things, it's like almost like protecting a crop from a freeze, like a mama bird protecting its baby birds, like because it's like we wrestle not against flesh and blood, because it's like as you're healing, like not everyone's going to want you to see better. Some people, they're just not pouring into you the way you would think. And as you heal, you're going to naturally resonate with some people more than others. But I guess that's just what I wanted to say, was just, healing's a process, be easy on yourself, give yourself some grace, give other people grace, but healing, boundaries, sometimes it's okay to love people from a distance. um Something somebody told me when I was younger was, you can love someone, you don't got to trust them, you know and this is something that I had to learn, which was hard. Like the Bible says God is no respecter of persons. And it's kind of like some people like, well, that's your mother, that's your brother, that's your family. But it's like you gotta I like what Kevin Gates said. It's like, you gotta expect people to be exactly who they are. Like and that was hard for me because I was raised to like, respect and all that. And it's like sometimes you gotta expect people to be who they are, like and just pray from them from a distance, because hurt people. And a lot of times um healing or not, living or people, we can be our biggest problem. I know I can be sometimes. Like I said, I'm great on my hard skills. It's my soft skills that, what I mean, I'm working on. um but yeah, healing, it's an interesting process, but it's worth it, like it's like choosing to invest in yourself, you know and everybody's level of growth is going to be different. I've gotten to a place now where it's kind of like, even when I feel whatever, it's kind of like I don't think the same, I don't react the same, nothing. um because I used to be very emotionally driven. You know what I mean? I'm empathic, so I'm real sensitive. Um, it can be really hard when you're empathic. Um, I seen someone post a video and I liked it. It was about what'd she say? She said that your empathy is one of the reasons you are where you are, because it's like, because you feel responsible. And I think in a lot of ways my family kind of they like to play on each other's emotions anyways. You know what I mean? Like do something and then get a reaction and then just, but I think people in general can be like that anyways. But yeah, healing's a process, you know? Um, for the steps of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord. And this is another thing. When you walk with God, you know what I mean? And like I said, I'm more spiritual than I am religious. You know, some of my opinions, a religious person be like, you know, but I found that, you know, some knowledge and stuff you're given, it's like God gives it for you, you know, and it's like not necessarily because everybody's journey and everything's going to be different, and our minds are built differently and our purposes are different. Um what was I going to say? Um but healing's a process. You know, it really is. Um, but that's what I was going to say. When you walk with God, you know what I mean, and you're trusting Him, because the Bible says yoke is easy, burden is light. It's kind of like before you know it, it's like, um, I always, I've said this, and it's like something I've started using a lot. It's like, I don't got to know how, what, where, when, why, where, none of that, you know, but long as I know who, and that's God, you know? Um, Side note, sometimes, you know, when people do things to you, like your relationship, you get cheated on, someone does you wrong, someone like people like, well, I want to know why. I learned this from my mother a long time ago, you know? If you knew exactly why somebody did something, the full details in their whatever, it would not make you feel better. It would make you feel worse. Because a lot of times when anybody does anything, you know what I mean? Like, it probably had nothing to do with you. They probably don't even know why they did it. They just were doing whatever. Especially nowadays, people just, you know what I mean? Like, people I think in the world we've have free will and whatever, but even now it's like people just have no balance in what they do. They just do things, you know, like but you know, rejection's God's protection. But I said this in like one of the other videos. It's like it's easy like whenever people are against you and things they've done against you, it's easy to feel some sort of way towards that individual. But the Bible says, pray for those who despitefully use you, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, principalities and powers and rulers of the darkness. Um, and there's a story in the Bible about the 7 sons of Sceva. You know what I mean? They tried to cast out the demon, and the demons were like, you know, we know Paul, and they named off some of the disciples or something, and like, but we don't know you, you know? So that's another thing too. You know, sometimes the first step in healing is just being real with yourself. You know, like I said, I had a supervisor tell me it's like the only thing I really had a problem with was taking criticism. You know, and I think that, you know what I mean? I really just kind of I've mulled that over, and I was like, sometimes yeah. Because it's like I always hold myself to a high standard. Um, you know, but what was I saying? You know, but like when people do things, don't take it personally. You know, Joshua, it says, choose this day whom you'll serve, but as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. Like I said, people, you know, people walk in a room, they give off an essence, an energy. Whatever you, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, you know, like that which done in the dark shall come to the light. Like, so just give yourself a little bit of grace, you know, like give others grace, but you know what I mean? Having boundaries is good, and it doesn't need explanation, you know? But I mean, like, handle things the way that you feel like, peace about in your own life situations. But yeah, healing and growing, spiritually and mentally, emotionally, all that. It's like that's another thing too. It's like almost like it's surgical, and it's like for me it's like God was a big part of it, and there's a lot of things, but God, um cuz it's like almost like you know, uh, choosing to stop doing certain things, and maybe being around certain people, and just it's like working on the way you talk to your it's like what and it's like as you start healing, it's like you'll see something that you didn't see, and it's like, but you got to clear out the rubble. I said that in another video. You got to clear out some of the big demolition to work on the foundation, to work on the pipe, you know what I mean? Like the pipes, could be like the brain, the activity in your brain, and um like what you're eating, how you're eating, are you drinking water? Um and don't feel like, like having balance in your life. You got to have balance, and that's another thing. It's like that's why I said I'm learning to live again. It's like giving myself permission to have fun. You know what I mean? Because I've done a lot of work on myself, and kept that focus. So it's like, I've worked on my hard skills, so it's like learning to work on my soft skills. Because if you deplete some part of yourself, it's like you're gonna strain others. It's like if you don't get an oil change, you'll burn up your engine. Like if you don't put brakes on your car, your car's not gonna stop. Like it's like almost kind of like checking in with yourself as doing routine maintenance. And sometimes you got to detox some things, you got to um clear the system, do a I don't know all the terminology, but my dad always did stuff like that. You got to clear some things out, maybe change out some air filters. So it's just, and it's and go easy on yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace. And it's like investing. You can't pour from an empty cup, but it's kind of like God said that I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. So it's like God wants you to be whole, you know? Sometimes it's just, going for a walk, Like I said, I've worked on my hard skills. I'm learning to work on my soft skills. So, and just breathe. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm thankful that I'm alive today. I'm thankful I ate today. I'm thankful that I have a job. I'm thankful that I have somewhere to stay. Sometimes, just, remind yourself to be grateful, and just speak kind to yourself, you know? So, yeah, you're worth it, you know? But yeah, I got that though, that little tangent, healing. So, stay blessed.